Hello, hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you. Let me post a quick announcement that we're starting. Okay. GM, everyone in the chat. Katir, Jimiam, Zaina, or Zana. I don't know what's the right pronunciation. Crash, Chris, Bob, Nakar, Emperor, Katir, Shadex. I see a green name there, but I don't know who you are. Tango Mike, PG, NDR. How's everyone doing? Agent Solace, the legend. Chris, how are you doing, sir? GM?
I am doing well. I told you earlier, I kind of was surprised at how big the town hall was yesterday. I didn't really expect just the amount of stuff that we were sharing. The good news is now I can just say whatever I want because I think we've spoiled pretty much everything. So I can talk with no, limitations.
Yeah. True.
I'm unshackled.
True, except for when you can say everything else.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It was crushing me when people were like, "When is HoloSim coming out?" in the chat yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, wouldn't you like to know? Comes out in a few minutes." Actually, it was live for the vast majority of the presentation. So if people just because like I was seeing that we were getting traffic, and I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that the link was live." So I was like, I just randomly typed in holosim StarAtlas.com. I didn't even know that was actually the link, but it was nice. Very nice. We're seeing transactions flowing. We have a stream, a data stream for AtlasNet, which is really, really cool. This is all stuff that we'll talk about during the presentation. But yeah, it's been a very energetic 24 hours. I just had a shot of espresso, so hopefully that'll kick in the next 5 to 10 minutes.
It will. Start going through the slides, gets the juices flowing.
We just have one slide. Gareth just put a big slide that said Q&A. So I'm just kidding. No, we've got a couple slides.
Yeah. Gareth, my friend, Eco Ninja, how are you doing?
Doing well, man. Yeah, as Chris said, we put a lot out there. Definitely not everything. A lot of surprises in store, but yeah, a lot more than I anticipated as well. A lot of big topics that people have been talking about, which again we'll touch on in the presentation. But yeah, excited to jump in.
Gareth, something tells me you're not using your mic.
I am. I tried to reset it before I joined here, and I will again once
I see.
We start here. But yeah, sorry about that. It's
no worries.
Part 2, I guess, from the town hall.
You sound good.
Yeah, dude, it sounds amazing. It's crisp, beautiful. All right. Should we get into it, Santi? I'm sure we are going to have a packed schedule today, so let me just...
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get straight into it. I think the committee cannot wait for more information to be dropped at them. But this is more of a digest, right, Chris? It's not that.
Yeah, I mean...
Kinda.
I don't know if we're going to be giving out too much alpha. I think it'll mostly just be answering questions. And in that way, it might be, new information that wasn't clarified yesterday. But obviously, with the C4 update coming out at the end of the year, it's probably 10xing the size of the game. It's certainly 10xing the size of the number of resources and assets in the game. But it's also significantly, blowing up the scope of different things you can do in terms of like the mining, crafting loops, and other things like combat. So I think it's worthwhile to go through a pretty extensive Q&A of just answering questions. There were a ton of questions yesterday in the town hall, so I think today would be a good opportunity to answer some of those. Did I already say something I shouldn't have said?
I don't know.
I see SDU whore with anyway. All right, so this is the 13th monthly Star Atlas Economics Forum. For those of you who don't know, this is an opportunity for us on a monthly basis to have a one-on-one with the community. It's a very fast-paced environment, the Star Atlas economy, and it's very easy to get bogged down in the details or just miss something important that you might have wanted to know about. So that's the purpose of these calls, these meetings. Typically we'll go over, the last month of data, any updates that happen. While we did have a few updates go out this last month, I don't really think that they're important enough or interesting enough to spend any time on today. I'd prefer to talk about C4, HoloSim, some new and exciting changes to our data that we provide to the community, and even internally the data that we use. So yeah, that's where you're at. Just so everybody knows that they're in the right place. I am going to pass it over to Gareth, who is going to tell you guys about an update that happened to the community dashboard.
Thanks, Chris. Maybe a slight improvement to my mic, but yeah, for some reason it completely resets every day. So we're just gonna have to go with the flow here. Yeah, so aside from all the awesome stuff from the town hall the other day, an update did go up in the background from, I believe it was late last week, if I remember correctly, but we are slowly building out better UI and UX for the community dashboards. Big shout out to Jeff from the design team and Ryan from our front end team for helping us push this out. But obviously before it was tucked away in the more section. Now we actually have our own header tab for economics on the DAO site. So a bit more navigable, and you'll also see the menu is a bit more attractive as well. This is a very small group of people working on this, and it's not a massive priority all the time. So improvements will be coming out to increase clarity and usability. But this is a huge step forward for us, reducing one of the maybe two clicks to reach the dashboards now. So yeah, excited about that. We also have the reports easily accessible. Not most people go straight to play.staratlas. A lot of people skip StarAtlas.com, which is where we used to store the reports in the past. Then they were buried in Newsroom, and not as easy as we'd have liked. So hopefully this DAO section will build out and not just host dashboards and reports, but other insights and other papers, and who knows what else. But this will be the new economy hub on the front end, and yeah, we're super excited to release more dashboards and continue to push updates to this. Chris, if you wanted to add anything, feel free.
No, not really. I know that you've been kind of spearheading this project, but yeah, the economy team is finally rising up in the world. We have our own tab on the website. Amazing. You no longer have to click other and more and scroll down on the Star Atlas website in order to find out that there's an economy team. So really excited about this. Also shout out to Jeff on the team. He's one of our super important web designers, and he's basically solely responsible for getting this out in the time that it got out. We thought we were going to have to wait on this for quite a while, so it's really cool to see all of our different dashboards, all of our reports in a very nice, cohesive flow. So yeah, super excited about that. Don't forget that you can go to the community dashboard in order to learn more about Star Atlas economy, prices, volume, active users, the rental market, all sorts of amazing information in there. And again, this is all on-chain data. So all of this is technically, this is not proprietary data. This is all available on-chain. It's all publicly accessible data. So, it's not like you could technically go out and do this your own. There are other community-run dashboards like the AFIA dashboard, or dashboards, I should say, that do an amazing job at giving even more detail than these ones. So, yeah, are you comfortable to move on, Gareth?
Yeah, I
guess
guess just. Sorry,
I
go ahead,
was going
Santi.
to ask Gareth if you guys still take suggestions for things people want to see in that
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
dashboard.
for
do. We
sure.
definitely. Yeah, so the last big dashboard update we had was like a forum or two ago, so a month or two ago. A lot of stuff, obviously, as you guys can see from the town halls, has come up, and quarterly reports coming up soon. So, and I was away for a week, which was another thing. But yeah, dashboards are still being worked on. A lot of updates coming soon. A lot of stuff happening on our back end as well with respect to our data providers going through updates and things that we have to do QA for and stuff. So definitely still taking suggestions. A lot of older suggestions are in the works and pretty much almost done. Uh, and so yeah, feel free to drop suggestions in the chat. And also something to note, Chris, just slightly before we move on. These tab pages, or the new design, basically gives us a lot more room per dashboard. So basically vertical space on the page to add more charts and insights. So before it was a bit crammed. We had to fit everything into a YouTube full screen size aspect ratio. Now we have almost infinite vertical space to add insights per category. So yeah, a lot of stuff that I'd basically omitted from the designs previously, I can now add back in, and hopefully we can get a lot more micro in some of these sections with that new space. So yeah, give us suggestions. We'd love to hear them, and they'll be put on the list to get added as we continue to build this out.
Yeah, and I think that this entire dashboarding interface could be. There's so much more we plan to do and we want to do, but do keep in mind, like if we were a full scale organization, there would be like a team of 2 or 3 people whose whole entire job was to maintain these dashboards. So keep that in mind, and bear with us as we try to get more and more fidelity here. I would love to create a HoloSim dashboard. I think that'd be really cool. You can keep track of the leaderboard. You can keep track of actions and different stuff like that. So on the note of HoloSim, let's go through a town hall economics recap. So the only reason there's a stick figure in the middle is because the slide looked so bad, and I was bemoaning the fact that we don't have any like artists helping us make slideshows, and then there was this blank space in the middle, and I didn't feel like going to find something, so I just put this. This is just your average Star Atlas employee after the town hall yesterday. So happy, very happy smile, 2 different sized eyes. This is probably Michael Wagner, actually, but who could say? I just made it, on a whim. Just trying to see if Michael's in the audience.
If you use the AI for this, Chris.
Yeah, this is actually the Studio Ghibli ChatGPT output. I know, it's pretty impressive. This is my animated. This is what an anime by Chris would look like. Anyway, sorry. Okay, so there's actually important stuff on the outside, on the outer ring of this presentation. So a lot of stuff happened yesterday in the town hall. So much stuff. I mean, it was 3.5 hours. There's so much content covered that we're not going to get to it all today. I want to hit the broad, most important strokes, especially from an economics perspective. The very first thing, even though you would think we're going to go here, we're going to go over here. There's a data runner sale going on. Remember, 50% off on the data runner ships. That is your Opal Rayfam and your Fimble BIOS Ranger. Those ships are both 50% off. So I believe the Ranger is something around $1,000, and then the Rayfam is something around, I don't know, 400, 375, something like that. So these are extremely powerful ships in the game. Don't if you have been wanting to get a data runner to improve your SDU loadout, please don't forget to go over there and snag one while they're on super steep discount. You'll recall we also had a couple of updates to the game, mainnet Sage, I should say, where data runners now have, I'm blanking on the actual changes, they now have reduced cooldowns for scanning. They have reduced food consumption. In fact, I believe the food consumption is 0. And then we also boosted the number of STUs that they found. It's 50% cooldown, yeah. So a couple of really great kind of game updates to the data runners recently. And we've really seen the labor force for SDU production shift over to data runner ships, which is kind of cool to see. Okay, so now the really interesting stuff. Probably the most exciting thing that I think happened yesterday was the announcement of HoloSim, StarAtlas HoloSim. And the whole idea behind HoloSim is that it is a simulation of the real on-chain Sage, but free to play. So it's still an on-chain version of the Sage game, but it's on a copy of the Solana blockchain. It's on a side chain. We call that side chain AtlasNet. It's basically an internal testing chain that we use to test all of our stuff. It's not decentralized, but it is immutable. It is publicly readable. It's got all of those great features that you like about a blockchain. It just is not fully decentralized because, again, it's an internal testing platform. So the cool thing about HoloSim is, unlike Sage, it's not on a major blockchain. And so when you do actions on a blockchain, those actions are going to incur a fee, the gas fee. And on the AtlasNet blockchain, you don't actually have to pay that gas fee. So it's completely free to play, not just in the sense that you don't have to purchase your ships, but also in the sense that doing stuff doesn't cost you money. This is an extremely powerful retention mechanic. So if you're a long time, Sage StarAtlas player, you're going to like this because this is going to introduce people who have never been in the StarAtlas ecosystem into the StarAtlas ecosystem. So this is going to be your Southeast Asians who maybe don't have as much income as us Westerners. And maybe this is your people from the Ronin ecosystem who are more familiar with those kind of free-to-play loops like in Pixels. So this really opens up the number of people that we can introduce into the StarAtlas ecosystem. And that is going to lead to any positive attribution that HoloSim can give to the mainnet product is massive, because we know that Sage players are extremely valuable in terms of the value that they generate in-game. And then HoloSim is eventually going to be a monetized product in and of itself. So we are planning on doing your classic kind of retention mechanics, trying to get people to stick around, microtransactions, all this stuff that you would expect from like a mobile game. So we do plan on monetizing it, but this is a test phase. This is a alpha test phase for the free-to-play product, the HoloSim game. So we're not monetizing it yet because there will probably be not server resets, but there will probably be resets where we reset everybody's account. And we kill old accounts just because this is still very much the test phase. We're trying to understand retention. We're trying to understand the economy, because, again, this is a very different economy than the on-chain, the Solana version of StarAtlas, which is on Sage, or which is Sage. So just a couple of stats on HoloSim. I know I saw a few unfamiliar faces in the crowd. That's kind of why I thought it would be a good idea to go over what is HoloSim and how does it differ from the main product. So I know some of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about, so I apologize for reiterating stuff you're already familiar with. A couple of interesting stats. We are just now starting to ingest and process data from AtlasNet, which is a very exciting prospect in and of itself. But I'll get on a little bit more on that later. So we've got 863 users that have joined the game thus far. This number is increasing pretty quickly. It increased, I ran it earlier this morning and it was at 700. And then I ran it about an hour ago before this presentation. It was at 863. So we're seeing our user growth, almost match what we have on mainnet, which is really, really cool. Now, obviously, anybody can spin up multiple accounts if you are, if you're somebody who maybe wants to join all 3 factions or something like that, you can have multiple accounts. There's nothing saying you can't. So who knows if these are distinct users, but this is the number of player accounts that we have. You can see the number of distinct users per hour over here on the y-axis. So you can see this is during our test phase. The game has been live for quite some time. And this is after we launched yesterday. We had about a peak of 160 in the first hour, and then that fell, and we've been since climbing. We're at about 100 users per hour. This will probably equate to around, at least this first day, probably 750 to 800 unique daily active users, which is really cool to have that kind of reception. All we did was announce this in the town hall and post this on our Twitter, or on our X. So it's a very good reception, in my opinion, based on very little, marketing. And then 103,000 transactions. So I didn't plot the transactions over here because it pretty much mimics this users per hour chart. But 103 unique transactions since the game was launched yesterday is a really powerful metric because it tells us a couple of different things. So the first one is the game is more transaction efficient than Sage Mainnet. You'll note that with about 1,000 or 1,200, between 9 and 1,200 daily active users, we typically do, anywhere from 1 to 1.75 million transactions on the main Solana blockchain for Star Atlas products. So the fact that we're doing 1/10 with not that many fewer users is actually pretty powerful. And again, that's because we're being a little bit more efficient with the way transactions are bundled together. The cool thing is, even with this 103 transactions, I've got this. You'll notice that you have Atlas in your HoloSim account, and you can use that to participate in the marketplace. And I actually don't think there are crafting fees, so you can just participate in the marketplace with your Atlas. We call that Z-Atlas or Z-Atlas. We're going to call the staking token for our on-chain, our kind of blockchain, the side net that we're running HoloSim on. We're going to call that Z-Sol just for simplicity. If we were to sum up all the fees that have been paid on these transactions, it's about 5.16 Sol. If that were on the real blockchain, that would be hundreds or thousands of dollars, which is really, really cool to think about. That our players are, I ran this calculation before I joined you guys, but our players are, on average, hourly saving 30 cents per hour. So the average player is saving 30 cents playing the game compared to what they would be paying if they were playing on chain. So you can see the power of the free to play and the power of this product in terms of providing people with a completely free way to engage in a Web3 game is pretty powerful, and it's a fully on-chain game. Again, it's not fully decentralized, but there is no such thing as a fully on-chain, free-to-play game out there, period, full stop. There's no such thing as that, especially not one with this many players. I'm sure you could find some fringe example, so don't even bother. But not one with this many players and not one with such a valuable user base as the Star Atlas user base. So that is HoloSim. A couple of initial facts there. Very exciting. One thing I wanted to talk about briefly, and this is only interesting to the few data bros out there in the audience, the AFIA guys, I don't know if Steven Sabol is in the audience, but our core kind of data obsessed Web3 folks. We are ingesting AtlasNet data into our data environment. Now, we had previously we had only gotten data through a third party called HelloMoon. HelloMoon is effectively a blockchain data aggregator. They pull in thousands of different programs that are happening on chain, in particular, a lot of Solana programs, including Sage, including Score, including all the different products that we at Star Atlas put out. And we've traditionally gone through them, and we've just hooked directly into an RPC, and we just read that data out with a very simple single endpoint. And that's great, but it means we're beholden to that, that provider in terms of what they're able to get us. Hey, if we launch a new program and they're not able to get that program ingested into their data feed, we're not able to read it. So the really cool thing that happened with AtlasNet and HoloSim is that we are now ingesting on our own, using our own proprietary tools that were developed by our all-star data engineer, Daniel. We are now ingesting AtlasNet data or blockchain data natively as a company. So we have no third party. We're just doing it all ourselves. It's actually a huge feat. You can imagine, obviously, we're not doing it quite at the scale as something like Flipside or Dune, but we're ingesting a lot of data just straight from the blockchain. It's really cool to see that happen. It's difficult to work with these data as they come in raw. It's just a literal string of random digits, and then you need to translate those string of random digits into human readable JSON files, human readable data. So really, really great kind of technological accomplishment happening. And we're already digging into obviously high level metrics in terms of number of users, transaction rates, successes, failures, how many fees are being collected. But we also have all of the actual game data that's happening in the game. So how many iron ore have been mined up, how many iron have been produced, etc. So just an amazing wealth of data that was just opened up. And we're going to be digging into this over the next month or two, probably, just going crazy. So it's like Christmas morning for us over here. One final thing I wanted to chat about, but maybe we'll save this for the Q&A because I don't have any specific thought. I don't have anything specific to say on it, but I did want to just open it up for discussion because I know it was discussed yesterday at the town hall, was UE5 Economics. So if you have any questions about UE5 Economics, I can provide kind of insight. They are working through the technical components of, okay, how do we get blockchain earning in the UE5 product? How do we get, what are the actions that can be performed in order to get this loop working? In terms of the how much and when and those types of things, I'm happy to speculate. But in terms of the actual, what exactly is it going to look like? We don't know that yet because we're still experimenting with all of the architecture. But I can tell you, scanning and mining are kind of the two big ones that have been thrown around. But yeah, feel free to ask me more about that in the Q&A. I think without further ado, we are about halfway through the session. So I think it's a good time to go into C4. And you guys, most of you probably saw the presentation yesterday, but C4 is the next iteration of Sage. For those of you who don't know, Sage is the economy game at Star Atlas. It's short for Star Atlas Golden Era. Basically, it's just an MMO, a space MMO with a grand kind of strategy economy as kind of the main the main selling point. And C4 is a massive update that will introduce 4 key gameplay components that have not previously been in the on-chain game. Those are claim stakes, which are a new way to mine up materials from planets beyond just ships. Those are crafting habs, which are a new way to process materials that goes beyond the traditional way of doing it in Sage, which was Starbases. Combat, which is actually active in HoloSim, but not active on chain for a number of reasons. And then the final one is council rank. So we'll finally have a fully fledged kind of experience points leveling up scheme and skill tree in the mainnet product. Again, some of these are already active in HoloSim, but they are kind of Web 2ified and they're a little bit half baked compared to what will be in C4. But yeah, an absolutely massive update coming your guys' way. The number of materials, I'm sure you heard some headline figures yesterday in the presentation, but we'll probably be looking at about 5,000 new assets in game. Right now, I think we've got somewhere around, 50 or 60 in-game assets between raw materials, components, and SDUs and all these different types of items that we have. So this will blow it up to about 5,000. Now, a lot of those assets are final goods, or what we refer to as final goods. And final goods are things that are either burnt or used for productive capabilities. So a building that you place on your claim stake is an example of a final good. And there are literally hundreds of different buildings that you can put on your claim stake. So that's where, like, 1,000 of the recipes are going to be buildings. And then 2,000 to 3,000 of those recipes are going to be ship components. As you probably saw yesterday, every ship is now going to have 10, 20, some number of unique configurations that you can apply to that ship. So maybe it's a mining configuration, maybe it's a combat configuration, maybe it's a defensive configuration. So each ship now has 20 different iterations that it can take, and all of those iterations require different ship parts in order to build. So that's where a lot of those new recipes are going to come in, are ship parts. You're going to have 1,000 different weapons, 1,000 different armaments, 1,000 different components, just tons and tons of variety. And you're going to use those and all their different tiers and combine them in order to make your ships and your fleets more powerful in Sage. So that's why there are so many. In terms of what we think of as like an ingredient in Sage, so your radiation absorbers, your aerogels, your iron, there's probably going to be about 200 to 300 of those. And I keep throwing around, ranges, and that's just because it's something that we are currently in the throes of finalizing. So a lot of materials are being thrown around, and we have our lists, and with that many materials, there's a lot of decisions to be made about, okay, when do we introduce this? When do we not? Which ones do we want to introduce? Which ones do we not want to introduce? But we're probably looking at 200 to 300 new kind of intermediate inputs. There will be about just shy of 100 raw materials. So right now there's only, I think there's 11, 12 raw materials in the game. That's going to blow up to about 75 or 80 raw materials. And then there will be about 150 intermediate goods that those raw materials will be crafted into. And then those intermediate goods will be used to make thousands upon thousands of final goods. And a critical component of those final goods is that they're blown up in combat. The vast majority of ship parts, when a ship is destroyed, the configuration is destroyed. So all the ship parts that were used, all the parts that were used to make that config are destroyed. The ship itself is not destroyed because the ship is actually worth a significant amount of capital up front. So the idea is, okay, we'll let you blow up, let's say, $500 worth of configuration materials that you crafted, but we're not going to blow up your $100,000 commander, for example. So that's the idea behind this config. So it creates this, I call it the, it's going to be a war industry, basically. It's just going to be, hopefully, a lot of combat, a lot of destruction, and a lot of crafting. The war machine is the term that we're kind of using for C4. But yeah, I've moaned on for long enough. I will pause there now that I've kind of given you an overview.
Sip of water, Chris.
Yeah, all I've got is espresso.
I was guessing. Should I ask you some questions that came in the chat, Chris?
Yeah, let's do it.
There's one coming from Virtual asking, why apply high risk zone dynamics to the medium risk zone, like annihilation of ship components and annihilation of resources at blown up starbases? He thinks he knows your answer. It's good for the econ, but is it ideal for the players? And a question below from Lerinor that is also related to it is maybe adding a chance for components to not blow up, like a dice roll. What do you think about that, Chris?
Okay, let me address the second question first, because I think it's a little bit more straightforward. So the idea that there would be a random roll for determining whether something gets destroyed when the ship is destroyed. I'm not opposed to that. I suppose we could introduce something like that. It would certainly make things interesting, and it might be a little bit disheartening if you know for sure that you're going to lose all your material. I'll make a note of it. I don't know how difficult that is to do. How we're handling RNG for combat is on the looting side of the equation. So once your ship is destroyed, your cargo is dropped as loot on the map. And right now, the way that we're doing all this, because it's all on chain, we are going to have the last hit be the determining factor on whether or not you get the reward and access to the cargo. So there's going to be a period of time after a ship is destroyed where the person who got the last hit has early access to get to those cargo materials, and then after that time period is up, everybody else can go and get access to those materials. And the way that works is every time you would loot, we roll a die to see which materials in there are destroyed, and that is a lever that we have to determine kind of the destruction rate of cargo in the game. So we might roll the die, and we actually haven't determined the final probabilities, but it'll probably be pretty punishing. But basically, you'll lose some portion of the materials in the cargo that were dropped by the destroyed ship. That's the only form of RNG that we have currently planned. I'm not opposed to having RNG for the ship components. I think that's a cool idea. That said, I think once the claim stake industry starts to get rolling and people realize just how aggressively they can power this war machine, I don't think it'll be as much of a concern. That said, we of course want to also consider things beyond just the economy. We want to consider player sentiment. We want to consider, also just user retention. Like if you're somebody who's put $1,000 into this game and you go in and you lose $100 worth of configuration materials, which is a humongous. That's probably not how much you would lose. Let's say a config for $1,000 ship. Let's say a config is worth $10 on the secondary market. It could be discouraging to lose that $10 for sure. And so I like the idea of randomness, but that said, randomness on the blockchain is pretty damn tough. So I'm not 100% sure if we'd be able to do something like that, but I'll definitely take a note of it. And then the second part was Virtual's question.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember. I don't see it in the list.
Why apply high-risk zone dynamics to the medium-risk zone, like annihilation of ship components and annihilation of resources at blown-up starbases?
Yeah, I mean, to be completely frank, that's maybe more of a Danny question. At the end of the day, he's kind of the game master. He's the one who determines how territory control works. And frankly, you guys know I'll never turn down an opportunity to blow stuff up. So I didn't really fight back very hard on that. Now, that said, obviously, there's this idea of there are two different versions of risk at play here. So there's obviously the literal defined zones in the game on the game map that says high risk zone, low risk, faction zone, and then your medium risk zone. So those will have different mechanics active in them, and I don't know what the exact restrictions are on destruction of ship components in, for example, the what are currently the numbered zones like Mud 1, Mud 2, Mud 3, Mud 4, Mud 5. I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm assuming we'll have some sort of safety net for players who are very deep into their zone, but the other component here is beyond the actual physical constraints of the game are the strategic constraints. And the reality is, if you're an enemy, let's say you're a player who's in, very, very deep in your own territory, the chances that you get blown up are exceptionally low because somebody would have to get through all of your defenses in That's never happened.
Did someone lag out? Did Santi lag out, or did one of you guys lag out?
No, we all crashed. The whole
crashed.
thing.
Discord just crashed on us.
Wow, that was crazy. That was sick.
Never happened before. Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, so there's this additional component of safety where if you're very close to, if you're in very deep in your own territory, the chances of you getting blown up are extremely thin. Now, the other thing is there's also restrictions on where you are able to physically go. I can't remember right now how the blockchain logic works, but I'm quite certain you're physically not allowed to go deeper than an outer territory into enemy territory. And I can't remember the exact logic there, but basically the way that the map dominance is going to work is you have to take one Starbase at a time and get closer and closer to the you can't just go straight for, it's physically impossible on chain for you to take over the Oni Central Space Station if you're MUD, for example. So there is a sense of safety if you're close to the center of your faction. But yeah, I mean, the whole idea behind the high risk zone was that you would actually lose your entire ship. That was originally the plan. I don't know if we are going to I don't know if we're going to do that now that we have this new config system in place. The config system was actually something that we came up with pretty recently, I would say, as a really solid solution to this issue that is, okay, how do we get people to fight each other without the consequences of combat being so astronomical, right? It's much scarier if you have a $100,000 asset and you're going and it gets blown up than it is if you have a $100,000 asset that has $200 worth of material on it that gets blown up. It's still risky, but it's nowhere near kind of that level of risk. Now, why would we want? Why do we want this risk? I think it goes without saying we need risk, right? There has to be risk associated with combat. Now, I will say the benefits of getting into combat. This is going to be a very, very important balance to strike. How valuable is winning compared to how difficult how bad is it to lose? That's going to be tough because, and this is a game theory problem. This is an incentive compatibility problem. But if the reward for blowing up, let's say a config is worth $100 or $5, and you blow up that config, and the reward is worth, I'm using secondary market prices here. I shouldn't be using dollars. Let's say that a config is worth 500 Atlas, and the reward for blowing up that config. So you see somebody floating out in space, and you say, "Ooh, if I blow that guy up, I'll get 600 Atlas." There is arbitrage there to be had in that you'll blow yourself up, in that you'll go out and you'll say, "Okay, well, I have a config that's worth."
Did we crash?
Oh no! Really? Can you hear me? Test. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. I think.
It's just Santi. Jesus, Santi. Okay, cool. Sorry, Santi. Our moderator is silenced. Oh, Jesus Christ. Can't hear anybody? Oh, I'm good. Christ.
Hello?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now, but okay.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if we can get through this. There's an incentive compatibility issue with combat that if the reward for blowing up a config is too large, then you will go out and blow up your own config. So you'll go in an enemy faction, you'll manufacture a configuration, you'll blow it up in order to get the reward. So that's something that is a very, very difficult problem to solve, and it's going to require a lot of experimentation in order to strike the balance. Now that said, there will be long-term consequences to blowing up a ship because it's obviously out of commission. So you don't just lose the config; you lose access to the ship for a specific period of time. Now, we actually still have yet to calculate the exact durations for ship respawn. There will be an option to pay to respawn. I believe it's either respawn in a very short period of time or respawn instantly. But you can rest assured that we'll make sure that there's no arbitrage to be had there. So that is kind of the incentive mechanism behind combat. There's another layer of combat that involves the starbases, and without the risks associated with the medium risk zone, starbase combat becomes kind of trivial. It's just like, oh well, if there's no consequences, I'm just gonna go back and forth, and then it turns into just who can throw more bodies at the problem, and how quickly can they respawn, versus okay, who's got the production pipeline in order to maintain this battle. You can imagine the starbase battles are probably going to be the main form of combat, kind of where the actual strategy is. Could I go and blow up somebody in order to get a reward, and maybe I can blow myself up for an arbitrage opportunity. But I don't anticipate that that's actually going to be where the real strategy is happening, because of the way that the Atlas emissions curve is going to work with combat. And I'll answer another question before I get into Atlas emissions in C4.
There were a bunch of questions about.
I know.
Need to scroll up a lot.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find one.
Funcracker says, so far we were always told that claim stakes would be upgradable. Did this change due to blockchain constraints or econ reasons? So there's a lot of complexity to unpack about claim stake upgradability. I know Wagner on the call yesterday at the town hall said that claim stakes would not be upgradable and not be craftable. There's no blockchain reason why that can't be, why that's the case. But there are some very, very profound economic reasons why we believe that should be. Now, I will caveat this with nothing is final, and we haven't really made a final decision on it. But one of the main reasons that making claim stakes upgradable is dangerous is that there's a limited amount of space on the map for claim stake tier 5s. So if all the claim stakes, you can imagine this kind of theoretical edge case where every claim stake becomes a tier 5 for one reason or another. And I can tell you what, we've got enough whales in this economy to be able to make every claim stake a tier 5. No matter how hard we make it, they would be able to do it. And so you have the situation where you want to avoid this edge case where there are nowhere near enough spaces for the number of claim stakes, because a tier 5 claim stake cannot go in a tier 4 slot on a planet. It must go in a tier 5 slot. So you can end up in a situation where, let's suppose we just have upgrading, no creation, no crafting of claim stakes. That's a bit of a scary situation, because you could actually end up in a situation where there are no tier 1 claim stakes, for example, and only tier 5 claim stakes, and you can't put them anywhere. And so all of a sudden, you kind of get yourself into an unwinnable situation. So that's one risk. The other risk is, and this is more on the econ side. One of the reasons I'm not completely against claim stake crafting and claim stake upgrading is because we can make it so we all know what a claim stake tier 4 costs. We all know what a claim stake tier 5 costs. It can't be the case that you're able to craft that in a way that would make it cost less, right? So we all see the secondary market. Suppose we were to make claim stakes craftable right now. I mean, this is one of the tricky things that we have with the current ship crafting recipes. And one of the reasons that's been a bit of a challenge to balance is that, let's suppose we sold a claim stake tier 5 for $7,700, and then we make them craftable for $200. that crashes the claim stake tier 5 market. Now, obviously, we can make the recipe so extremely expensive, so astronomical that we maintain that price structure, which is fine. But eventually, the inflation of those assets does reduce the price over time. Now, this is less of an issue when we have 100,000 players and Automata is generating revenue to keep the doors open. But it's more of an issue when we're not getting that residual revenue from secondary market sales, so the secondary transaction fees. So it's a very nuanced problem. I only addressed really 2 of the potential issues. And to be completely honest with you, Funcracker, when claim stakes were originally kind of launched, this was like 2021, I think. It was a really long time ago. It was before my time, so I don't want to talk too much about historical what was said historically, just because I wasn't really a part of that discussion. So hopefully that kind of gives you an answer. I know AFI is very big into producing ships and goods and stuff like that. So yeah. Yeah, that's
question. Do you want to?
No, all good. No, that's fine.
Okay. Do you want me to pick another question, Chris? Sorry.
Oh yeah. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah. So Lerner is asking. So the town hall was absurd yesterday, and I'm sure a lot is still work in progress as far as economics and balancing / implementation. But I have a question about the veil removal that C4 will present. Will we have some sort of comprehensive guides as far as what does what, recipes, resources, locations, etc.? We will clearly explode in possibilities, and of course, skill is now rewarded. But how do you see Sage transitioning into C4 as far as economics go from a player perspective? It's a bit of a wide question.
Yeah, so I think that Leonor is asking a question about complexity. I think it's like, how are people supposed to manage all of this?
Yes.
And I'll answer the question kind of with respect to that, or that framing. So obviously the game is going to kind of blow up in terms of complexity, and it's arguably already a pretty confusing game to play. And some of that is due to the fact that it's just a difficult game to understand. The UX could be improved. Our UX for Sage, at least as it's currently designed, was it was created by a bunch of engineers. So while I think it's an awesome product, it's not like it's we're not going to win any UI competitions with Sage, I don't think. So that is one thing that's kind of not helping, is that it's just a little bit confusing to actually play. But then in terms of the economic complexity, there's multiple angles that you can approach this question from. The first one is, I'm a new player. I just got in. What the hell do I do? I think that the council rank system and and even potentially a cute little quest system on top of it helps a lot with that. Hey, go do this thing. If you guys have played HoloSim, it is so much easier to play HoloSim than Sage Mainnet, because HoloSim tells you what to do. It says, go make a fleet, go mine this asteroid, come back to the Starbase, craft something. It teaches you, it handholds you. So that's one thing that could help a lot with this transition. Now, in terms of our very economically savvy and financially literate players who are trying to get the edge, for me, obviously the complexity is a good thing. I think that if we could create a game, because it's all on chain, there's a lot less randomness, there's a lot less flexibility that we can have with creating this game economy. Complexity is one of the ways that we can make it so that we hit our North Star. And our North Star is not everybody can do everything. I think I've said that on a number of occasions. So my hope is that the complexity will not be overwhelming for new players, but be too broad for veteran big asset holders. we can almost think of the two categories of players. We have players, and then we have, Atlassians or whatever. What do we call our people? Galleons?
Yeah.
Galleons. Sorry.
Because of copyright.
Yes. So we want to satisfy the new player, the person who's just casually interested, who wants to spend 20, 30, $100. And then we also want to create an interesting challenge for those people who have those multi-$1,000 fleets. So it is a concern, obviously. But yeah, I mean, if we got to a situation where some of our bigger players weren't able to do everything, I'd be a pretty happy camper personally. I think I've said that in the past. So hopefully I did your question justice, Larinor. But we're going to move on to another question. We've got 4 minutes left.
They were asking about the Atlas emissions topic that you say you were
yes. So so the Atlas emissions, that has been something I've been working on for the last week, and I think I'm really happy with where it's at. So a couple of notes. Obviously, this is all, none of this is final. Typical caveats, typical disclaimers. This is all just the current design, how it's currently being implemented. The first thing is we are hoping to do away with fix in exchange for ship config. Basically, if you want kind of this passive way to earn Atlas on the market, you can create ship configs and sell them into the market for warlords. So warlord can just go to the marketplace, buy their ship config, outfit their ships, and then go to war. They don't have to worry about bothering with the whole entire crafting process. So we're hoping that the ship config, the war machine, will replace fix. That's the idea. Now that means that our old enemy LP is going to make a comeback. Okay. Now it's not going to be as bad as you think it is. All right. We are first of all going to, because LP will be the only Atlas emissions loop at this stage, and who knows, honestly, at this stage we may have finally shut down Score. We've been saying that we're going to do that for years at this stage, but at this point LP will be the only emissions mechanic for Atlas, and with that being the only emissions mechanic for Atlas, we can greatly increase the LP pool. So we have, at least currently, we have an Atlas emissions target of 8.5 million Atlas per day. Now that's going to slowly go down over time. At least, that's what it was about 6 months ago. It was 8.5 million. And that's why I've been, losing a little bit of sleep over the Atlas emissions we're seeing right now, because we are above that target. So the idea is we remove fix, which is basically unlimited amounts of Atlas emissions. There's no limit to the amount of Atlas that can be emitted via fix. It's as limited as players' productive capabilities. With LP, there's a fixed amount of Atlas that goes out each day. That's really nice in a tokenomic sense. It's not really nice in terms of user growth. Because, hey, why would I want to add somebody to my team if if that means I'm going to get less Atlas? Now, there's a lot of interesting things we can do with that mechanic. That's something I'm going to work hard to counteract. I don't want to talk too much about that because that's still nascent. Still kind of working through the logic on how we can break away from this negative feedback loop of, hey, more players equals less Atlas for me. That's not what we want. But I do want to get into how LP will work with the combat system. So first of all, the current plan is that LP will drop upon the destruction of a ship, and it will drop in a big, big, big way. The amount of LP that's going to be dropped for combat will absolutely make all other LP earnings mechanics seem trivial. And the idea is you're putting up a lot of risk in order to earn this LP. You should be rewarded handsomely. There's no risk associated with going out and mining up biomass, creating food, and then putting it in for upkeep. There is risk associated with going out and trying to blow somebody's ship up. So you will be rewarded handsomely with LP. We'll still have some other LP loops, of course. We'll still have upgrading. We'll still have upkeep, in fact, and we may even have some other LP loops. So there's really nice interplay here. First of all, the more careers you can take in order to earn LP, the more democratized LP will be, and the less. Right now, we've got a Gini coefficient of about, for LP of about 75 or 80. That's the highest of any country in the world. And that's not good. That's high income inequality. And that just means that it's very difficult for somebody who's small to kind of amass any sort of wealth, or at least that's what it indicates. So what this more kind of decentralized market will mean, okay, there's ways for me to go and I can earn LP through combat, I can earn LP through scanning, I can earn LP through upgrading Starbases, I can earn LP through upkeep. All these different careers will hopefully smooth out that income inequality and make it more attractive for smaller players to participate in LP. So that's kind of the first thing. I'm curious, what did you diminishing efficiency as players LP increases? Oh, that's interesting. So that's like one component. The other big component that I've been kind of hinting at is the way that the Atlas emissions curve will shift and shape based on the state of the map. It's kind of, I think it's a really cool mechanic. Still in the testing phase, so TBD on whether this is actually what we end up doing. But every single additional Starbase a faction yields will give them diminishing marginal return to Starbases. So the very first Starbase that a faction takes over will be the most valuable Starbase they ever receive in terms of their LP Atlas emissions. So each faction will have an Atlas emissions pool that is equal to the number of regions they control on the map, or it's a function of the number of regions they control on the map. And because of this diminishing marginal returns, the first region you control is worth the most, the second region is worth the second most, third region third most, and so on and so forth. And what this does is it creates a natural balancing mechanism that makes it so that, let's say Mud has completely dominated the map and they've got 65% of the map covered. Now Mud is still better off than if they were at 33% of the map covered. They still have more Atlas emissions than they would. But everybody else is worse off, because every time, if we think about a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split, that is actually the optimum Atlas emissions on the Atlas emissions curve, because everybody has an equal amount of control. The moment Mud takes a region away from Oni, for example, Oni loses more Atlas than Mud gains, because of the diminishing marginal returns. So just as each additional Starbase you earns you fewer Atlas in the LP pool, it's the opposite when you lose a Starbase. When you lose a Starbase, that's the least valuable Starbase you can lose. So there's this natural balancing mechanism that will hopefully, it basically increases the incentive. The worse off you are as a faction, the higher incentive you have to fight back and to earn more Atlas. Now, one of the other reasons that this mechanic is important is so that there's no dominant faction, right? If it was the case that every region was worth the same amount of Atlas, then why wouldn't you all just get into one big faction and just, beef up the Atlas emissions pool? So there's this natural balancing mechanism. Now, at the same time, how do you get LP? You blow shit up. You blow Starbases up. You blow your opponents up. That's how you get LP. So there's an incentive to blow people up because you want to get LP to earn Atlas. But there's also an incentive to keep the map balanced. So like I said, we're still going through simulations and making sure that there's not any unintended consequences. But it seems like probably the way that we're going to go about it. Again, the critical part for me is to make sure that the marginal player is having a good time, that the marginal person, the person who comes in and starts playing Sage, is having a good time, and the people who are already in Sage are happy that person joined. That's the bigger problem I think that we need to solve. Again, we have solutions that we're thinking about, but I thought it'd be cool to talk about how Atlas will grow and twist and shape as the map changes. Actually, oh good, I'm not sharing my screen. Okay, I think I've got a chart that will be cool.
People love charts.
Yeah. I might not have it readily available.
How are you doing on time, Chris? Can you stay a couple minutes more?
Yeah. I know we're 5 minutes over, so that might not be good for other people. But
other people, audience, they like you to keep going.
Okay. So here's I just posted a chart in the chat that shows the total Atlas emissions in a very basic simulation. And you can see this is from MUD's perspective. So this is the Atlas emissions for MUD in blue and Atlas emissions in the total game in red. Ignore green for now. So what this says is that up to 23 Starbases, both the total game emissions and MUD emissions are growing. And you might notice that 23, 23, 23 is where every single faction owns the same number of Starbases, and all Starbases are claimed because there are 69 regions. Sorry, I keep saying Starbase. In C4, these will be massive regions that all contain dozens and dozens of Starbases. But there will be like a major Starbase, which is kind of the king of that region. So if you control that major Starbase, you control the region. But that's a whole other discussion that will take a long time to get through. But basically, if you can control 23 regions within the ecosystem, Atlas emissions peak just over 8 million, around 8.15 million. And then each faction gets basically the exact same of Atlas every single day. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to progress along the x-axis, and we're going to have this number of Starbases that MUD controls grow. And let's look at, for example, 50. At 50 Starbases, MUD owns the majority of the Starbases in the galaxy. But that means that Oni and Ooster have lost Starbases. And because they've lost more than MUD has gained, the total emissions, that red line, has actually gone down. Now, I've also got a green line there called, so you can see, real quick before I get to the green line, you can see the maximum, the minimum number of Starbases, the minimum Atlas emissions with all Starbases being controlled is just over 4 million, which is pretty much half of what it would be at its peak. That green line, that final line, is the number of the amount of emissions if two factions were dominant. So basically this says, okay, after you get past 23, MUD takes only from Oni and not from Ooster. So Ooster maintains 23. And then where that little kink is in the green line, that's where MUD has taken all of Ooster's planets, or of Ooster's regions, and now it's starting to dig into Oni. And so that's why, you kind of see that kink. So just two different kinds of simulations there. But that's generally how the curve will probably look. How to prevent mass faction exits. Is this an example or a vision of the future? This is an example. This is not. This isn't really. This is planned to be implemented on chain. So this is within kind of the scope. How to prevent mass faction exits. So the whole point of Katir has a question about mass faction exits. So one of the risks associated with having equal weight for every single Starbase is that if every Starbase is worth, let's say, 100 Atlas or 1,000 Atlas, what happens when one of the factions has, let's say each faction has 100 players, and the biggest faction controls 90% of the map, so they've got, 90% of the emissions. Well, everybody's going to pile into that faction. But in fact, the way it works is that there's a kind of a much larger marginal return to gaining a Starbase if you're in one of the smaller factions than there is if you're in the big faction. And then once everybody moves over into that bigger faction, now the bigger faction has lower Atlas per player because there's the larger denominator. And so there should be some nice balancing that happens there in order to encourage the factions to balance out and no mass exiting. Is there a plan to sunset Fix before C4? Right now, there's no plan to sunset Fix, but do expect this is more of an update. Do expect a change to Fix in the next couple of weeks in a further effort to try and get Atlas under control.
Chris, there's a good question there. Do you know who gets the LP when multiple fleets attack the same fleet?
Yeah, so that is going to fall. Unfortunately, it's going to follow the same logic as the final hit for cargo. And we know that's not ideal. We know that has not worked super well historically for MMOs. But as it currently stands with the blockchain logic, that's our best bet. The alternative is to sum damage and use that. The issue with sum damage is that obviously if somebody's gained health, how do you determine, okay, well, you dealt 1,000 damage, but did you deal 1,000 damage of the current health bar? So it gets very difficult to actually calculate how much each person should earn. It also requires an on-chain calculation to be, it requires an actual formula to be like a value to be calculated, which is a little bit tough. Things that go beyond summing in transaction data are difficult. So with those, for example, we wanted to keep track of how much each person had dealt. We would need to keep that in an account on chain. And then we would have to read that account, run a calculation, and spit the number out, which is a much, much more involved system than just saying, okay, look, this guy was the last hit. Now, that's not the way we want it to be permanently, but that is kind of the current way that we're going to be able to implement it. But yeah.
Okay. That was my guess as well, yeah. Any other questions? Chris, do you have like 5 more minutes or?
Sure. Let's do one more question.
One more question. Let's see if anything comes in. How are you balancing everything?
Well, I've actually employed the help of Gareth this time around. In the past, I've pretty much been able to do most of the econ balancing myself, but this was just too large a task to do as one person. So Gareth and I have been working together on this. I'm really excited about that. He is actually currently doing a comprehensive analysis of all of the crafting recipes in the game, the buildings, all of that different stuff to make sure that is a nice, well-oiled machine and it's a rewarding system. So he's working on the crafting stuff, and then I'm doing kind of that LP, the combat system, and then defining extraction rates kind of at the very base level. So a lot of moving parts. Obviously, we are trying to do it as programmatically and algorithmically as possible. We're not going in and manually placing numbers on every single building. We are creating heuristics and stuff like that in order to do this. So yeah, it's a big task, and it's funny, we talk about AI all the time. I've tried to use AI. I don't find it does a good job. So unfortunately, we're not really, at least Gareth and I are not employing AI all that much for our part.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. And there's a suggestion coming from Salax saying fighter mining rate needs to depreciate over time before C4 launches, because if you wait for C4 launch date, the negative emotion of losing all the mining rate is going to far exceed the positive emotions of getting a new game.
No, that's a really good point. And that's one of we know, and this is why, so there's obviously a bunch of numbers to calculate. That's like, to be honest, like, not to trivialize it, but that's the easy part. The easy part is coming up with numbers and, hey, here's what a production possibilities frontier looks like in economic theory. We just apply that. That's easy. The hard part is making sure that this economy, this multi-million-dollar economy that we currently have built, does not crash and burn the moment we introduce this new economy. For example, we're going to be moving from a ship-based economy, which is a $125 million asset class. We're going to move over to a claim stake-based economy, which is a $5 million asset class, right? So what happens if we were to, for example, have a 1-to-1 production rate between the old game and the new game, using only claim stakes? All of a sudden, our market crashes because the claim stake is only worth $5 million, while the ship market is worth $125 million. So we're trying to maintain value for value in that way in order to balance old economy with new economy. Yeah, it's definitely. I lost that question. I accidentally scrolled.
Which one, Chris?
The one about. Zalek, the one from Zalek. Sorry, the one from Zalek.
It was a suggestion, yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to balance that, and in there is the fact that ships are going to see at least fighting ships, and probably all ships except for mining ships are going to see a massive reduction in their mining rates. Right now, the idea is about. I probably won't say that, but yeah, they will receive a reduction. And then obviously they will receive a huge boost when combat is live. Now, I like the idea of slowly weaning people off of fighter ships, Zalex, but here's the risk. We work at a business, we work at a company that has lots of moving parts, and while I might have this perfect plan in my head that's like, okay, we're going to reduce the emissions rate of ships by 5% over the next 6 months, or every month for the next 6 months, and blah blah blah, and it'll end on this date. If the game's not released, then all we've done is reduce ship value by some massive amount, and we don't have anything to replace it. So I do like this idea, Zalex, but I do get scared because the reality is you guys are extremely keen. And you're not, it's like, oh, sure, I know that fighting is going to be valuable soon, but it's not valuable right now. I'm going to sell my fighter ship and I'm going to go buy an SDU, a data runner. I'm going to buy a mining ship because I don't want to deal with this in the short run. So we have the risk of accidentally crashing the ship market in the short run. So that's like my biggest fear about messing with ship stats before C4 launches. But I do really appreciate the idea there.
Nice. And Chris, I saw a question, the only one we had from UE5 Econ and Sage, and we can close with this one if you want.
Yeah,
which
it's
is
probably a good idea.
How big will be the UE5 GU or whatever resource is used impact on Sage?
So we'll probably handle this in the same way. In terms of the asset class, we'll handle it the same way as we're handling the C4 transition, right? So we want to make sure that we don't make UE5 too valuable or not valuable enough. Same thing with claim stakes. If claim stakes are broken good, then it's going to crash the ship market. If claim stakes are broken bad, then nobody's going to care about C4, and it's going to be a huge disaster. So one of the ideas that we have had rolling in the back of our heads is that because you have to go in and physically play UE5, there will definitely be an effort premium in UE5, like a certain effort premium. Now, I'm sure there are ways to automate, UE5 actions, but it's not as easy to automate as the Sage game because the Sage game is, it's a web browser and you just click. But there's also the risk that people would be able to invoke the UE5 instructions on the blockchain directly and not even have to go through the UE5 steps. So there's a bit of some risk management we need to do in order to make sure that an increased reward mechanism in UE5 is not exploitable. But yeah, the idea would be that UE5 would be significantly more rewarding. How much more rewarding, we still have to determine. I said significantly, that could be, we literally don't have any data on it. We need to do the analysis. It could be anywhere from, 10% all the way to 3x. Who knows? We still need to do that balancing analysis. I'm waiting for those guys to kind of finish up and be ready to go before we really dive into that, because we've got plenty of work to be done on C4.
Cool. All right. I think we covered a lot. Well, you covered a lot, and Gareth covered a lot here, Chris. We can begin closing. Anything you want to share before we close this stage?
Seems like there's a lot of interesting discussion going on in the chat. Thank you guys for listening. I know I can drone on and on, so I appreciate you sitting around and listening. But yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll definitely see you next month. I don't know if Gareth has any closing thoughts.
Yeah, no, thanks as always, and great explanations, Chris. Obviously, a lot more still on the table to talk about, but hopefully we can slowly answer those questions over time. So thanks again, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you guys as always. And if you want to learn more about C4, next week we'll have Brett at the Atlas Brew. I just posted the event link in case you want to go. Mark is interested. And as always, first Thursday of each month we'll have the confirm. So thanks everyone for joining, and thank you Chris and Gareth as always for all the information. See you everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, guys.